Welcome back to the Unlockable podcast, and thank you guys for listening. Today's episode is all about genres, and I think it's going to be on par with our ports, remakes, and remasters episode. Hannah and I have over 25 pages of notes between the two of us, so we're actually going to make this a two-parter. Episode 2 will come out in July, but right now you're in for a solid part 1 full of debate, and you're most likely to learn something. I mean, you probably learn something every time you listen to our podcast, right? Give us a good rating wherever you're listening to this, whether it be with a thumbs up on YouTube or a 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, and let's start breaking down some video game genres. Thanks for tuning in to episode 28 of the Unlockable podcast. I'm Christian, and joining me as always is the Game Girl Advanced SP herself.
That's me.
I heard, Hannah, that you have not had Wi-Fi for a while.
Dude. Yeah. The Wi-Fi in my building has been out for a week. I just now got it back yesterday. I woke up to it and I was like, oh, praise the Lord. But it's been a rough week, let me tell you.
Yeah, dude, I mean, I can't even imagine. I cannot live with that Wi-Fi. I'm a full-on millennial. I try to tell myself, like, oh, I have a DVD player and all these DVDs. I have Game Boy. I have old consoles. Like, why do I need internet? And then it's like, I don't know. I'm waiting for a game to load, and usually I whip out my phone or something. And I know that's probably a bad habit, but that's how it is in 2022. And, yeah. I don't know, man. I can't do with that Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I'm on that. I'm full-blown millennial, too. I didn't say I wanted to be dramatic about it, but my God, it was awful. I watched, I think, 1,000 episodes of Triple D, Diners, Drive-In, and Dines on regular cable TV.
Oh my gosh.
Whatever that show is called. At least I watched 1,000 episodes of that.
Everybody loves freaking, what's his name? Spiky
Guy
hair
Fieri.
guy. Oh heck yeah! Guy's Grocery Games is a classic too, man.
Yep. I watched some of those too.
Can't go wrong with it. Yeah. Thank God you had something to do.
I know, right? Play with my what are they called? Pickup sticks and my jacks.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're gonna skip the part where you said that you were using the hotel across the street's Wi-Fi.
Well, yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So there's a hotel across the street from my apartment, and every so often it'll like flicker onto my computer Wi-Fi and it'll be like really weak signal, and it'll work for like 20 minutes and then it'll stop, and then I'll see it randomly again in the day and I'll get all excited and then it'll stop. So yeah, I had little trickles of Wi-Fi. That was me, my desperation.
Let's get into it, Hannah. What have you been buying lately? Anything at all?
No, I have not. Unfortunately, I know it's another one of those weeks where you just totally outshined me in what you've bought. But no, not since I mentioned everything last time. I have not bought anything. I kind of overspent last month. What about you?
Oh, just today I actually got a couple of PC games in the mail. Atomic Bomberman, a game that apparently came out in 97 for Windows 95. I don't know. Pretty neat. It's a giant box, PC big box game. I think it looks awesome. I think it's hilarious that PC big boxes are like so large for the shelf and to like impress customers, and then you take it home, you open it up, and all that's in there is a jewel case. It's just I love how monstrous they are.
It's a tease.
Yeah. I've been buying some GameCube games again, nothing special. I do have to bring up something that popped up on eBay that I was able to score this month. I got the it's a 1998 E3 promotional item for Rayman 2. It is an earring, a literal earring, and I don't know the full story as to why this exists. But this it literally says the live Rayman show starring Rayman, and I don't know if there was some kind of a panel happening, and because it's got a time and place on it. It's like, hey, you need to be here at E3 to see the live Rayman show. I have no idea.
Is it a single earring or like a pair?
A single earring, which I
Wow.
think
That's
goes
even
with like the
weirder.
pirate theme. I think it goes with the pirate theme. It's like a giant gold hoop.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Gotcha.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm so happy to have it. I've seen it before and someone wanted $50 and I wasn't doing it, so I scored it for 25 shipped.
Wow. A
Most I've
single
ever
earring.
spent on an earring, and also the least I've ever spent on an earring.
Oh, how are you even going to display that? Hang it up?
You think I'm not wearing it right now?
Oh, true.
I have a little Rayman shelf. It's the only game series that gets its own shelf in my game room, so.
Now you have an earring. Congrats.
I got Link's Awakening DX. So I got like the box empty a while ago. Just got the cartridge and manual to complete that. Might have actually mentioned that on the last episode. I don't remember. But yeah, aside from that, nothing crazy. I have not been buying a ton of stuff lately. I've been losing some auctions lately, actually, but
Oh,
yeah.
no. That's always devastating.
What you been playing though?
Well, nothing that uses Wi-Fi. This is so sad. I wanted to sit down and play the demo for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, the new like big DLC expansion pack. And I was like, oh, I can play on my Switch. I just can't play on the internet, so that'd be perfect. And then I was like, I can't even download it. It's
Tragic.
awful. I know, so I wanted to play that, and I will get on that now that I have Wi-Fi. But yeah, that was what I wanted to play, and I couldn't even do it. So nothing.
You bought nothing, you played nothing. It's just been a rough month, I guess.
And I've basically just been sitting here staring at the wall.
I beat Guardians of the Galaxy. Pretty sweet game. Would recommend. I have been playing Super Mario Strikers. Now, we should probably talk about that for a minute. I got it day one. I think it's a solid game, but I've talked to my friends about it, and I have to agree with them. They're going the Mario Golf route, and by that I mean they give you a decent game up front, and they are going to give you free updates along the way in hopes to keep the game alive longer. That probably helps them sell more copies at the end of the day. Every time it gets like rejuvenated, then they can tweet about it and people are like, oh, I forgot about that game, let me go buy that now, as opposed to just one initial launch. Like, I can see that from a marketing standpoint. However, the game is pretty lacking right now, and I don't know, it's probably not worth $60 at the moment. Like, I am having a pretty good time with it. The online is not laggy. Good job, Nintendo, on that.
Nice.
And there's like some fun competitive stuff to do. You can play with friends and like be on like a clan, so to speak. And I've been enjoying that with one of my friends who got the game. So I'm very impressed with Nintendo's online on this game. But yeah, there's no story per se. You just kind of play against computers, and you can roll the credits and quote unquote beat the game, but at least Mario Golf had like an actual story mode. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's worth 60. I think you guys can wait. You listeners out there can wait a little bit until the updates are in, until there's more characters, more maps. But yeah, that's my quick review on Mario Strikers.
Well, that's good yet disappointing at the same time. At least the Wi-Fi isn't, or not Wi-Fi. The connection isn't laggy between online
For sure.
play.
It's honestly better than Mario Golf was. I mean, Mario Golf requires less of your internet, I feel like, and still was kind of laggy. So, other
need
than
to really
that,
get on that.
Your boy beat Super Mario Sunshine. I freaking did it. Our least favorite game here on the Unlockable podcast.
That is true, yes.
And
Is that still your opinion of the game?
It is certainly my least favorite Mario game. It's not an awful game, but it is not the
Oh,
best Mario game. It's not even. It's got to be the worst Mario game, right? I mean, it's not. Mario games are all good, I would say, but this one is the least good, if that makes any sense. It was not. I would not play that game again.
okay, good. So you're still of a very similar opinion. Good. I'm glad.
I really was going into this thinking, okay, I'm going to figure out what my issue is with this game, and I still don't really understand it. I don't know what the problem is with
The
Sunshine. There's something wrong with
controls
it.
and the camera are all bad.
The other thing I wanted to mention was Castlevania 2 Belmont's Revenge on the Game Boy. That was pretty fun. This is probably the easiest Castlevania game that exists, I would say. So if you're into or if you're wanting to get into Castlevania, you might start with that one. But let's get into the news. We have started to try to keep track of the news a little better. We do have a good amount of
It's
stuff
a work in
written
progress.
here. So let me go first here. I had written down Super Bomberman R online service termination. So this one, I've talked about this game on the podcast quite a few times. This was like a big disappointment. Not the termination of the service, but the game itself was a disappointment. It started out as a Google Stadia exclusive, and then they brought it to consoles as free to play, and it's not really free to play because you do have to pay for some stuff, and it's not worth playing unless you pay for the stuff. I don't know. It's a pretty disappointing game. It's no surprise that Konami is turning off the servers this year, December 1st, 2022. Yeah, doubt anybody is going to miss that game. I hope, though, that it means Konami is going to do a better Battle Royale Bomberman game. I hope that that's what is coming.
You can hope.
I got, new Pokemon Scarlet and Violet trailer was released. As always, the internet is going to tear it to shreds for the graphics. I couldn't care less. I had a blast with Sword and Shield, fantastic games. I had a blast with Arceus, and yeah, I'm already ready for a new Pokemon game. I'm looking forward to those.
I don't know if I'll pick that one up day one or not. I'm kind of Pokemoned out. Still have yet to beat Arceus. Not that it was just a bad game, it gets so repetitive over and over and over and over again.
Well, there you have it. I wrote that Hideo Kojima has announced that he's working on an Xbox game. Just bringing that up because it was funny to see all of the people on Twitter pissed off about it. People were talking about how Kojima is now betraying all the PlayStation fans after all these years. Just ridiculous. Hannah wrote, do you want to go over that one?
Yeah, so I just thought this was funny because you know how you always buy like GameCube games or like retro games. I just thought it was newsworthy that you actually bought yourself a new Switch game versus either me or someone else buying them for you. But you actually bought 3 recently.
So I mentioned Mario Strikers, and then you might have to help me with the other 2. One of them was the Taito game, right?
Correct. And I know I said the other one and I forgot what it was.
Dang it, Hannah.
I literally told you yesterday, I know. And I forgot what it was. Darn, I can't keep track of my games and your games.
You can get started on your news and I'll look it up.
Okay, so Nintendo announced that there was a Direct, but, to the chagrin of many fans of Nintendo Directs, it was just a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Direct that happened on June 22nd, which was yesterday, as of recording this. They showed a bunch of story and combat. I didn't want to watch it too closely, though, because I like to just jump right in and, experience it for the first time while I'm playing it. But yeah. If you are not sold on the game, I would definitely watch it because it really goes in depth and shows you, if you're going to like it or not. It introduced the main characters of the game. There's 6, plus a whole bunch of side characters. They all have, their own, stories and story arcs and whatnot. And this is something that I didn't know how to feel about. They like pre-announced a paid DLC, so it's gonna be like $30 for like extra story, extra characters, extra stuff, like elements to the game. But like they already announced it, so I know Xenoblade Chronicle games are hella big and you know it's super packed. I would never say that they would cut something out of a game, but I know people are going to say that about it. Like obviously they're taking this part out of the game, you know, so that you don't get it up front. But then again,
so like I was just talking about with Strikers.
Yeah, kinda. I mean, all these Xenoblade Chronicles, well, I can't say all. 2 had DLC that came out after the release of the game. So it's something that they wanted to add on to extra, you know, characters and blades and whatnot. But then it also got like its own side game, Torn of the Golden Country, which is like a prequel to 2. And so I don't know, did they take a portion of the game out, or has the game been done for so long that they've been working on this DLC and they're like, yeah, I guess we'll just release it as paid DLC and get some more money. You know what I'm saying? Because obviously this game has been done for a long time. They moved the release date up 2 months, you know? So how long have they been working on it is my question. I don't know. There was a lot of controversy about that. And then some more things that people are upset about, me included. Oh, you know what? Hold on. I did want to buy something this past month, but Nintendo totally freaking dropped the ball. And that was the freaking Xenoblade Chronicles 3 special, like, collector's edition. Only sold on their website, by the way, which is the first time that has ever happened. And, oh god, it was a freaking disaster. It seriously makes me so angry to talk about, but I didn't get it, even though I waited online for, like, 8 hours. So they announced on Twitter the day before that, hey, pre-orders are going to go up tomorrow. So, like, you know, stay tuned. And then it randomly opened up at, like, 11:34 or something in the morning. And the website crashed immediately. You were, like, given to the screen that said, you know, you're in a waiting line, blah, 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 blah. It's experiencing a lot of traffic. And that was pretty much how the website stayed the entire day. I got as far, I think it was, like, 5 or 6 hours in. I think I texted you. I said I was like 5 or 6 hours in, and I just now was able to add the collector's edition to my cart, but then the website crashed and I wasn't able to do anything with it. And so that was pretty much everyone's. I know like 3 people in the entire world, well, I guess just North America, who actually were able to get this game. And dude, oh god, I was so angry that entire day. I'm still angry about it. But, like, the whole day I was just pissed. I was like, I have lost faith in Nintendo. They need to get their website stuff together because it's ridiculous. And other people in other nations, Australia and all those other ones, didn't have a problem. Not a single hitch in their whole thing. And we just crashed immediately.
That's how I know that Nintendo doesn't listen to this podcast, because they would have made sure that Hannah Montana here got her freaking copy. They would not have let you down.
And then the best thing is they just decided to close it out altogether. And they're like, yeah, we're going to open it up again on a later date. It's like, really? I've been here all day and nothing. Oh, God, I was so angry. Anyway, the next bit of news is related to the Persona series, which I know very little about, and so it always confuses me when there's like a gajillion different kinds of Persona out. Anyway, I'll try to keep this straight in my head. So Persona 5 Royal, which is the newest one, but not the original version of Persona 5, the one that came out with like extra content and stuff. Anyway, Persona 5 Royal, okay. Persona 4 Golden, and Persona 3 Portable are all coming to Steam. Persona 5 Royal will come to PlayStation 5, while Persona 4 Golden and Persona 3 will come to PlayStation 4, which is confusing. Why didn't they just put it on PlayStation 5? But I digress. Persona 5 Royal is coming to Xbox and Game Pass on October 21st, with Persona 3 Portable and Persona 4 Golden coming sometime in 2023. And nothing for the Switch. Absolutely not a thing. But weird. It's coming to Xbox.
Yeah, that's really weird.
So we're hoping that it's going to be announced at Nintendo's Direct whenever that may be. Hopefully soon, but we'll see. And then my last bit of news here is Square Enix has announced Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion for PlayStation 5, Xbox, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, or Xbox Series X, I guess, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. It is a remaster of the PSP title Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII, and it will launch this winter.
I actually have that PSP game.
So do I. You know how many times I've played it? None.
Less than one, yeah. All this RPG talk reminds me that I need to get on some Ys Origin.
Yeah, you do. I told you we'd play together. That'd be so fun.
Oh, yeah. That is a great idea. All right, Hannah. I think it's time.
Time for the main topic.
We got a big one today. How many pages of notes you got?
I have 18 pages.
Yep. All right. So I have 13, which sounds about right. You always have more than me.
I'm very wordy. Or I just do more. We'll go with that.
What are we talking about today?
So we are tackling the main topic, everyone's contested topic of genres. What are they? Why are they good? Why are they bad? We're going into all of the categories which we think are genres, the subgenres of those genres, and maybe even some categories of those subgenres of those genres. So buckle up.
Yep, you will need a seatbelt for this one. I don't really like genres across anything. Music, I find it very difficult to classify music into genres. Video games are no different. And yeah, I guess we can get right into why genres exist. So I think that it is, it's obviously important to have genres, even though I just said I don't like them. I understand why they exist. If you like a certain game and you find out what genre it's in, then you can go and find other games that are in that genre. It's a great way to help you explore more games that you apparently like, that you think you might like, right? If I find out that I really enjoy... Nope, we're not even going to go into examples. We have so many examples to talk about for the next 2 hours that we're good. We're not going into it right now. But we watched this YouTuber, Foxcade, and he said it best, I think. As soon as you start to ask questions and look closer at genres, they start to tear apart at the seams. So in other words, don't ask questions. Just accept it. Just see what Wikipedia has and just accept it, right?
Yep, or maybe go watch some gameplay now that you can do that in the 21st century.
Yeah, that's all you need. That's all I need for sure. Why do you think we have genres, Hannah? What do you want to add to that?
I think you hit it, right spot on. Obviously, it's so that video games are classified. This is specific for video games, I guess. Are classified on a basis of similar characteristics that they have, and then they just kind of rolled with it. Like, yeah, all of these games in this genre are going to have this, but we found out that's not necessarily the case. And then genres kind of fall apart because video games, there's not necessarily just one way to play it. Video games can be played 1,000 gajillion different ways and, interpreted by people very differently. So it's very hard to kind of categorize them. And also, video games can have so many elements of some other genres, which we'll obviously get into later. It's just, so what do you call it? If it has so many different genres and so many different things kind of like melded together, how do you classify that? Yeah. So we are going to explore that.
I think that kind of answers the next question, which was going to be, why are video games so confusing, or video game genres so confusing? But why would you say that they are more difficult to explain than movies or books?
Well, I think also we should definitely mention that books and movies have different genres. So like if I say I'm going to go watch, a comedy movie, right? When you say that to a game, what does that mean? Yeah, I'm going to go play a comedy game. That doesn't mean anything. So comedy just, it's, you're going to go there for the laughs and stuff. But when you translate that to video games, it doesn't make any sense. Now action, you could say, gets a little more, action in movies though means like bombs and like people running and like people beating people up. It's all got like the same elements. And there's only one way to watch a movie, right? There's not necessarily different experiences. So yeah, I think it's more cut and dry with movies than video games, because like I said, they can be played differently in 1,000 different ways. But yeah, you hit it on the head with music though. I don't know genres for music either. I mean, I know like maybe basic genres, like if it's classical, like I know that one. But
yeah.
Some of the newer stuff, I don't know what I listen to. If I like it, I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that same YouTuber Foxcade also mentioned that games have, you can classify a game by its story and also by how you're playing it, like what the gameplay is like, and that's not something that exists in movies or books. So it's like another dimension, basically.
Yep, I agree.
That's all I got for that part, but I think that we are ready to dive into literally every genre.
Yep.
Anything else
But
you
hold
wanted to
on.
mention first?
Yeah, we should preface that a lot of these are our own definitions that we have come up with games that we're familiar with.
Yeah.
So if you disagree, that is totally fine. Genres, like we said, it's more of a spectrum. If you think something more leans towards RPG than strategy, that's fine. I'm not going to say that you're wrong, because we will get into why strategy or specifically strategy just sucks to kind of define. But if you can give us definitions that you think are right, either message us on Instagram or, comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. That'd be great.
Or join the Discord. But anyways, let's get into the first one. I'm going first with platformers here. My favorite genre by far. The Wikipedia definition of a platformer is the core objective is to move the main character between points in an environment. Now, that's kind of absurd. That can literally describe the majority of genres. Now, it does say the core objective is to do that, right? So you're moving your character in 90% of the genres we're going to talk about today, but the core objective, the main goal, is to get from point A to point B. Wikipedia goes on to say platform games are characterized by levels consisting of uneven terrain, hence the platform, and suspended platforms, hence the platform, of varying height that require jumping and climbing to traverse. I think everybody knows what a platformer is, but to put it into words like that is, I think it's helpful. Subcategories. So we get right into your 2D platformers. Been around since God knows when, the 70s. Examples that I wrote down: Donkey Kong was from 1981. Everybody knows the classic arcade game. And then Pitfall. Have you ever played Pitfall?
Yes, I have.
Very famous, very just staple in platforming. I don't know what it is the first for, but Pitfall on Atari 2600, I don't think it was ever an arcade game, but released in 1982. Run from left to right. It has multiple screens. You're jumping over gaps. You have to avoid falling into pits and getting eaten alive by alligators. Classic gameplay right there. I have to write something here. We're kind of jumping from classic to modern here with this one, but auto runners will fall under this umbrella as well, the 2D subgenre here. Temple Run, everybody knows Temple Run. Super Mario Run, these are both auto runners where like you're playing a 2D platformer, but you're not actually moving your character. You pretty much just jump, right? You can do different kinds of jumps. You can wall jump. You can slide in some games. But this is basically something I wanted to mention real quick. It's successful with mobile phones because of their lack of controls required to play. I don't know if anybody's ever really played, like, I don't know, a platformer on a phone. I don't personally play phone games, but the few that I have, it's not fun to have like a fake analog stick on a touch screen. It's not enjoyable in the slightest bit. Yeah. 2.5D. This phrase was actually used as early as 1994 in an interview for PC Gamer magazine when Warren Spector was describing his FPS game System Shock. He was talking about how his game was true 3D compared to games like Wolfenstein and Doom, which he was saying were 2.5D. And nowadays, 2.5D just refers to like a 2D platformer with 3D graphics. The best example I can give is Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. When I first started hearing about 2.5D, I thought that it was referring to how in Tropical Freeze, you can jump between like platforms that are near the screen and far away into the screen. But that's not actually what they were referring to. But it makes sense, right? I can
No,
see
it definitely does. I can see that.
Yeah. And then we get into 3D. Everybody loves a good 3D platformer. In the 90s, games started to go from pseudo 3D to true 3D. And pseudo 3D is when a game uses like 3D polygonal renders of CGI characters or objects for its sprites and graphics. Took that from giantbomb.com. While true 3D actually gave players an additional degree of freedom on both the character and the camera. And I think that's a big one here, is when you really start to control the camera, revolve around the character that you're playing as. You're really into the 3D platformer era there. The best examples and some of the most obvious examples here is Super Mario 64 and Crash Bandicoot. Yeah, nothing crazy to mention there. Collect-A-Thons. I wanted to put these under the 3D umbrella, but they really are their own subgenre, because you can have a collect-a-thon, whether it's 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, doesn't matter. But basically, instead of the goal being to get to the end of a level, the player is tasked with gathering specific items to progress the game. And I always think of Banjo-Kazooie. I first played Banjo-Kazooie a few years ago after I started collecting, and I was like, man, people have talked about how awesome this 3D platformer is. I'm so excited to play it. And I found out it was a collect-a-thon, and I was like, what the heck is this? Like, I'm not... this is not what I wanted it to be. And that's not to say that I hate the game or that it's a bad game or whatever, but just not at all what I was expecting. I don't know. It's like a Donkey Kong 64, like obviously same developer, whatever, but it's very close to DK64, which is something I grew up playing. And then Spyro, I didn't play that until I got older as well, but Spyro is 100% a collect-a-thon as well.
Yep.
Spyro I do enjoy quite a bit.
Have you played 2D Spyro or only 3D Spyro?
I haven't played the GBA one since I was a kid. I don't even remember what they're like.
Yeah, I think those are also collect-ons. I do have a question though, while we're here before we move on. So you said that collect-a-thon was not necessarily getting to the end of a level, but collecting a bunch of stuff. So, right. With that definition in mind, I made you play this game, but is Yoshi's Story a collect-a-thon then? Because it's not about reaching the end. It's about getting enough fruit to get all the fruit around your screen. Is that one a collect-a-thon?
And then you get to like choose your path, right? You don't have to exit at a certain point. That's true. Man, by that example, it's got to be a collect-a-thon platformer,
right? Definitely platformer. There's nothing contending that, but yeah,
right.
So interesting. It's not just a platformer; indeed. It's a platform and collect-a-thon.
Glad you brought that up. There's isometric platformers, which I don't think a lot of people have played an isometric platformer. I would define it as being able to move in 3 dimensions with only having 2-dimensional graphics. These can sometimes be classified as pseudo 3D, like we were talking about earlier. Congo Bongo is a Sega 1983 game that is a prime example of this. I also have Rayman 3 Game Boy Advance written down. It's probably the only isometric platformer I've played that I can think of, except for one that just came to me, I would say Qbert is probably an isometric platformer. It is definitely isometric. I would just have to wonder if it is a platformer. Arcade
We got.
games. What?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I feel like arcade games can get weird with trying to define genres, but you are jumping on platforms, so it's just not the goal. You're not trying to get from A to B in Qbert, so I don't know. That's a good one to debate. We have more platformer sub-genres. I wrote down run and gun, which people could probably argue is its own genre. I'm going to call it a subgenre of 2D platforming, or just platforming in general, actually. But basically, run and gun from Wikipedia is minimal focus on precise jumping and a major focus on multi-directional shooting. Best examples, Metal Slug, Contra, everybody's played those games. One that I think is much less popular, a Neo Geo game called Shock Troopers. I originally played this one on a Neo Geo cabinet a few years ago, fell in love with it. I've been playing it more recently on my Neo Geo Mini. It's an excellent game. I think people typically think of running left to right for run and guns, but games like this can actually allow you to run north to south, east to west, everything in between. So I just kind of wanted to mention that as well. Because Contra and Metal Slug definitely just left to right. That's how they are. Things that do not count as run and guns. Mega Man. He's running left to right, and he is shooting constantly, I guess. But the main focus of that game is actually to get to the end and defeat the boss. And I would say that is taking precedence over just shooting, right? Because Mario is a game where you run left to right, but you also have to kill people along the... Not kill people, good lord.
Oh my gosh. What? What Mario games are you playing?
You gotta jump on Goombas and Koopas and destroy Bowser at the end, but that doesn't make it like, I don't know, a beat 'em up, right? Like, that's not what Mario is, just because he's taking Goomba's lives in the middle of it.
I would agree. I think that was a good analogy. I agree. I was on the fence about Mega Man, but yeah. Okay, I agree.
I also wrote Metroid. The whole Metroid franchise does not count as a run and gun, and that one is solely because you're really not going left to right, point A to point B in that game. You are heavily focused on exploration, and we will get way more into detail on Metroid later on. The last subgenre here, puzzle platformer. A puzzle platformer is characterized by its use of a platform game structure to drive a game whose challenge is derived primarily from puzzles. That is the Wikipedia definition. Door Door is an Enix game from 1983, one of the earliest of that subgenre. There's also the popular The Lost Vikings, was on Super Nintendo, I think maybe Genesis as well, on 1993. Wario Land 2, 3, and 4 are all definitely puzzle platformers. I have played a little bit of that series, Wario Land 2, 3, and 4. It's definitely like, go through... It's almost there's definitely some exploration going on, but I would say that there is more puzzle solving going on than exploration, so I would put it under this category. And then, no doubt about this one, Mario vs. Donkey Kong, all of those games would definitely qualify as a puzzle platformer. You have your little Mario minis that you have to control, and I don't know how to explain this game, but you're basically trying to get all of your characters to a door to let them exit the level. And in order to do that, you have to... There's a lot of traps. You can fail the level. I'm not doing a good job of explaining this one. Man. Go watch Mario vs. Donkey Kong so that I don't have to sit here and struggle. But yeah, something like Mario vs. Donkey Kong might be considered a puzzle game. by itself and not necessarily a puzzle platformer. But I do think that the puzzle platformer subgenre exists because when you think of a puzzle game, you're thinking, Match 3, Tetris, things like that. I'm sure that you will clarify that one up for us whenever we get to that one. But that's
Yep.
what my brain goes to for sure. I do think there could be an argument that puzzle platformers could actually be under the puzzle game umbrella. Maybe it just depends on the game. Um, Puzzles are present in many games across many genres. I thought I would mention that. And some other notes here. I would say platformers. Well, it's not that I would say it, it's the truth. Platformers were the most popular genre for the late 80s and into the mid 90s. Platforming has definitely had a revival in the last 5 to 10 years. Where does Metroid fall into all of this? I would say platform adventure game, commonly known as Metroidvania. Hate that term. But as the name suggests, it is a fusion of platforming and adventure, and we will talk about adventure later. Heavy emphasis on exploration and especially backtracking. Anytime a game mentions backtracking, you'll hear any YouTuber throw out the term Metroidvania immediately. So that's what platform adventure definitely has backtracking. And then, you're not just going point A to point B to finish the stage. It's more free roaming. I've already mentioned a bunch of personal stuff with 2D platformers, but a few more here. I would say they are far and away my favorite genre. I'm definitely inexperienced in puzzle platformers. I have not played the Lost Vikings. I have really hardly played the Wario Land series, and I've obviously played Mario vs. Donkey Kong, though I can't seem to explain it right now. I always love a good run and gun. That is a very fun genre, even though they're really tough a lot of times. And just a handful of favorites here. The basics, everyone's going to say these, but Super Mario World, Super Mario 3D World, Super Castlevania 4, Rayman 2, the entire Donkey Kong Country series is chef's kiss. I freaking love those games. Sonic the Hedgehog, Gunstar Heroes, and the Metroid franchise. That's it. You're up.
Wow. That was a lot.
That was a freaking lot.
Heavy ones right out of the gate. So my first one is RPG, which has become one of my favorite genres since, playing things like Xenoblade Chronicles and stuff. But boy, was it confusing to get into. So I went with a general kind of definition of just what RPG is. That means like physical tabletop games or like video games and stuff. So this is pulled directly from Wikipedia because it's important to the history. A game in which players assume the roles of characters in a fictional setting, usually a fictional setting. Players take responsibility for acting out these roles within a narrative, either through literal acting or through a process of structures and decisions making regarding character development. So this means like things like tabletop RPGs, Dungeons and Dragons, or like LARPing, which is live action role playing, and then of course video games. So a lot of the RPGs obviously were based on things like Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop RPGs. That kind of was like the first. And then of course when we started going into the digital age, people were like, okay, let's just digitize it, and then it just branched out from there. So a video game specific definition is a video game genre where the players control the action of a character or several party members, which we'll find out later, immersed in some well-defined world, usually involving some form of character development by way of recording statistics, which is very important. What distinguishes RPGs from other games is the stats and levels and, trying to improve your character. And the higher level you are, the better you are at taking down enemies, higher defenses, and other sorts of statistics like that. So, like I said, I'm very familiar with RPGs. Not all of them, but some of them. So I wrote down the characteristics that I myself have found in many RPGs, and also did a lot of research on it and like read it and stuff like that on what people think other characteristics of RPGs are. So 1, the ability to improve your character over the course of the game by increasing stats or levels, like I said. The menu-based combat system with several choices of skills, spells, other active powers, or special skills or whatever, as well as an active inventory system with wearable equipment such as armor and weapons that you can change at any given time or improve by like imbuing magic or, getting a certain level up or something like that and applying it to your armor. 3, a central quest that runs throughout the game as a storyline and additional and usually optional side quests, also important. The ability to interact with elements of the environment or storyline through additional abilities. Things like lockpicking or disarming traps or communication skills or things like luck. And then 5, the existence of certain character classes that define the characteristics, skills, abilities, and spells of characters like wizard, thief, warrior, or like tank is what you refer to somebody who's like big, who has a lot of defense, stuff like that. And then we have the subgenres of RPGs, which there are a lot. So first and foremost, the one I'm most familiar with is action RPG. It emphasizes real-time combat where the player has direct control over the character as opposed to turn-based, where it's like stop, wait, decide what you want to do, attack, maybe not attack, stuff like that. It's not real time. You're just pausing to think about what you're going to do next, whereas real time, you're just hacking and slashing away at an enemy. While still having focus on characters' stats in order to determine relative strength and abilities. Often use action game combat systems similar to hack and slash or shooter games. Can also include action adventure games, which include a mission system and role-playing games or mechanics, or MMORPGs, which I love to talk about here in a second, with real-time combat system. So it's kind of like if 3D Zelda games were more focused on like leveling up Link's equipment and weapons and other things like that, instead of just like relying on getting more hearts, to carry you through the game or the harder enemies. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm with you.
So now if Zelda were to implement some kind of weapons and armor upgrade system, I suppose that would make it an RPG? I guess it depends on how like fully, how they flesh that out. But examples of this, just kind of action RPG, are the Mana series, which I know you're familiar with, the Ys series, the Xenoblade Chronicles series, and Elden Ring, which just came out. So I didn't know that was an RPG, but that's interesting.
I believe it. Everything's an RPG these days.
I thought it was more action adventure, but I guess it's just action RPG. But that's cool. I actually have to play that one. So the second, I assume this is to be a subgenre, even though we kind of agreed that multiplayer isn't necessarily its own subgenre. Mm-hmm. But it can be turn-based, it can be action RPG, it can be all those things. It's MMORPG, which stands for Massively Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Game. Or I found out another cheeky kind of what it stands for is Many Men Online Role-Playing or Playing as Girls or something. And I was like, that's true. So true. Many Men Online Role-Playing as Girls is what it's called. I'm like, oh dang, called out. That was funny. So this is an RPG style game that can have many people playing simultaneously. Like I brought up the fact that it's, hundreds of thousands of people playing together. And you're like, you brought up Fortnite. And you're like, well, hundreds of thousands of people play those at the same time. And then my, argument to that was not at one time. Like in Fortnite, you're 100 people in one map. And there might be, thousands of different lobbies of these 100 people. But with RPGs or MMORPGs, you can actually see those people and interact with them all the time. There's thousands at once playing with you. So yeah,
I see the difference.
It includes elements of RPGs like leveling systems, training, or grinding, depending on what your terminology is. Often have weapon classes like wizards and orcs, elves, stuff like that. Can have different kinds of mains. So that's like melee main or magic, like what you choose to be like your main fighting. Examples of this are RuneScape, which I love that so much. World of Warcraft, and this one's fun because I used to play this one too. Do you remember Disney's Toontown online?
No.
You don't remember that? Oh man, that was so fun. It's actually Disney related. So yeah, example would be RuneScape, which I play all the freaking time. And I recently got addicted to it again because I was doing research, for this episode. But anyway, like I said, you can see and interact with people in the world. You start off as a level 3 You can customize your character. You can have any armor you want, any clothes, any color, any hairstyle. And basically, you have a set of skills. I think there's 15 skills for free to play and 23 skills for members, which you have to pay like a monthly fee or whatever. And you can basically, every day can be different. Like one day I want to go train mining. So I'll sit there in a mine and I'll just continue to mine over and over all day. Or I can decide that I want to practice my magic and I'll go equip all my runes and staffs and wizard robes and whatever and decide to go train magic for hours and hours and hours. It's like every day can be different. And if you get bored doing something like chopping trees or thieving or any of those other things, you can do whatever you want whenever you want. You can also talk to people like real time. So like some of my best, this is so sad, but some of like my best friendships or whatever have been made like through this game. Just like talking to random people, be like, hey, what are you doing? Where are you from? Stuff like that. So I think that's a really unique experience that MMORPGs offer. But my question is, do you think they deserve to have their own category or subgenre or not?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Next, we have... Don't care to elaborate at all?
I think that... I don't know. Like, these games could just be RPGs, but it's not like there's a single player option, and I think that's kind of the key here. Like, these are online multiplayer games, and that's the only way to play them. So I think it's a good subgenre for sure.
Okay, cool. So the next one is turn-based RPG, which is like, if you see it, you know what it is and you know what I'm talking about. But I guess if you've never seen it, you would know. But it's exactly like the name implies. Often the flow of the game, specifically the combat, is split up into like sections or turns. So like encounter enemy, then you pause. It's like, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to move? Do you want to attack? Do you want to use an item? And then attack. And then after that, there's like another thing where you want to use an item, or depending on what the game's, parameters are. And then it's like enemy turn. And then he has those same turns, and then it's your turn again. So you're taking turns. It's exactly what it sounds like. They can be called phases or turns or whatever, depending on what the game says. But usually they're used for like a character to sit there and analyze the situation. Like, oh, what would be my best move to kind of implement some kind of strategy? Like I said, there's an action phase, there's an attack phase, depending on what the game is. And it has all of the aforementioned elements of an RPG, because this is a subcategory of RPGs, but it's that specific turn-based is what makes this one different from all the other ones. So example, and these are some fast, differently examples, but Paper Mario, Pokemon, and Octopath Traveler. They're very different, but the main core mechanic of like their combat is turn-based.
Yeah.
So you can go out catching them Pokemans, but you have to sit there, choose which attack you want to do, or use an item, or run. So it's very paused. It's very, slow. I guess I would imagine it's slow, very methodical. Then the next one, which I thought was super duper interesting, is roguelike and roguelite RPGs. Do you know what those are?
Oh, I'm so glad you wrote them down, because I have heard those terms so much, and I'm ready to learn right now. Okay,
so they are characterized by procedurally generated levels, which I did not know. They're usually dungeon crawlers, turn-based gameplay, sometimes, tile-based graphics, permadeath, which I thought was like just the main thing, and typically set in like an epic, like high fantasy kind of narrative setting. So, a little bit of history. I did not realize that roguelikes descended from like a 1980 game called Rogue, which was a Unix base, Unix is an operating system. It was a dungeon crawler. So all of the games that you hear that are roguelike got the name from this game, which I thought was really cool.
That is really cool.
So, just a little bit of history of Rogue. It's a dungeon crawling video game, which is like we'll contest that later. I have that written down in my notes. Where the player controls a character as they explore several layers of a dungeon, defeating monsters as they go. And specifically in this one, the goal of the game is to find the Amulet of Yender at the bottom of the dungeon. This game is also turn-based. So, I looked at this game, you think it's going to be some like epic, cool, like adventure, whatever, but it's from 1980. And so picture this, close your eyes, okay? So you're looking at a screen, like a tiny, teeny, tiny little computer screen, right? And your screen's completely black, okay? And the dungeons or the rooms that you move through are literally like, a room would be just like L, and then like space, like underscore, and then L up the side, and then underscore, like to make a box, but like out of letters. And then like your treasures are like question marks or like slashes or like H's or F's or something. And then your enemies are like, I think they were percentage signs. So it's like, wow, this epic adventure. But it does not look that epic. But that's basically entirely what the screen was just letters and numbers and L's and slashes. And just imagine moving through a dungeon with rooms completely made out of L's and underscores.
Yep.
That's what it was. This game also implemented permadeath, which means that when a player dies, the player is dead, completely dead, or the character is dead, and the player must restart the game with a new character because obviously that one's dead and can't respawn. And, which I did not know, is you cannot bring that character back at all, even if you reload from a previous save state. So it's like, that character is dead. You could not bring them back. This game was also procedurally generated, so no, like, game or, like, run-through is the same as the previous one. So monster encounters, the dungeon levels to set up, the treasures found in the dungeon are all different through every playthrough. This makes every move that the player makes super meaningful, because when you're dead, you're dead. And this game obviously went on to inspire a lot of the other roguelike games, which I thought was super duper cool. So I did not know that. So some roguelike RPGs have all of these elements of roguelike games. An example of that would be Dead Cells, which is a very new game. Have you ever played it?
No, it's on my list.
So this one specifically is not necessarily just roguelike. This is going to make you angry. It's classified as a 2D side-scrolling Roguevania or roguelike Metroidvania game.
Pissed.
So it's procedurally generated dungeon to explore. That's kind of what you're doing. Dying does send you back to the beginning, and you lose most of your stuff, like the cells and like things that you've collected in that game. But there are permanent upgrades that you can obtain while playing the game through the collector. So even if you do die, you still get to keep those. It's just like resetting you back all of like the, I don't know, money that you've collected or all those little small collectibles that aren't permanent. So dying still does suck, but it doesn't suck as much if you have the permanent ones. But yeah, I thought the Roguevania would make you angry. So really, it's the permadeath and the procedurally generated dungeons that what makes this roguelike. But then it's also 2D side-scrolling, like Metroidvania games.
Right.
So yeah, I thought it was super interesting. That's one of those games that... Rogue is one of those games that everyone's like, oh, it's roguelike. It's one of those really influential games.
And literally no one knows what they're talking about when they say that because no one's ever heard of Rogue.
Exactly. I thought it just meant, like, permadeath. Oh, I'm going rogue. I'm just going to go for it. But that is not what it means. Come to find out. So the next subgenre on the list is Sandbox Rpgs. This is what Wikipedia said. Now I'm down to be convinced that it's not. And like I said, I'm not really sure this should classify as its own subgenre, but basically it's just an open world RPG, non-linear in structure. The player is free to roam around wherever they want. This one made me angry because Wikipedia also said this, but example is the Zelda series, and I could not disagree more. Zelda is not an RPG. Yeah. Some games might have some RPG elements, like Skyward Sword had like the upgrading your, the whole point of the game is to upgrade your sword, but like you can upgrade your net, your bow, your slingshot, all that other stuff with things that you've collected. So it's kind of RPG elements, but most Zelda games aren't even open world at all. Like Breath of the Wild was the only one that did that thus far.
Yeah.
So they're just wrong. This is one of those things where Wikipedia is unreliable. The second example is the Elder Scrolls series, Fallout series, the Fable series, and it also said Xenoblade Chronicles series, which, yeah, it is open world, but I can classify it more as action RPG, but I guess you could say it's sandbox or open world action RPG.
It's not linear?
Mm-mm.
Interesting.
It is linear. You have to do like certain things to get to the end, but like you can do side quests or do anything in like any specific order.
Right.
So yes and no, but you also are free to roam around wherever you want. It's not like set paths.
Yeah.
So do you think that deserves its own subgenre or not?
Oh, I really don't think any of these examples have been super good. So it's kind of tough for me. Yeah, I don't know. Sandbox RPG. Definitely not Zelda.
No, that was just awful. I just thought we should mention that just to tell people that is absolutely wrong.
Actually, the problem is that I have not played Fallout. I have not played Elder Scrolls. I have not played those huge games that that you just said fit into this category, so it's kind of tough for me.
Gotcha.
If that's
played
truly
Fable?
what they are, no, I have not played Fable.
Oh, wow. Go ahead, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, if that's truly what they are, then yeah, they deserve their own thing, because those are some very important games. They're still making those games, very relevant video games, so I would say yeah.
Right on. Okay, so the next one is, again, not sure if this is a subgenre, but we'll get your opinion on it, is first-person party-based.
What?
So in these games, right, I was like, oh, it's a party game. And it's like, no, not that kind of party. So the player leads a party of adventurers, like 3 or 4, people as their party, in first-person perspective, typically through a dungeon in a grid-based environment. These games are also called blobbers because the players move the entire party around the field as a single unit or blob. That I didn't know. That was news to me.
Is that what? Is this what Wonderful 101 is?
Oh, it could be. That's not one of my examples, but it totally could be.
Neither of us have played it, so I don't know why I brought it up.
Nope. These games are usually turn-based, but there are some real-time. Some examples include, and I didn't look these up, and I should have, Bard's Tale, that series. I'm going to butcher this name, but this actually came in on 3DS recently, I think. Etrian Odyssey.
Oh, yeah.
And Elmanage, which I think is a really popular one. I don't know. Don't have that much experience with these first-person party-based ones, but if you're controlling, 3 or more characters at the same time in a party, I feel like maybe it is, but I don't have that much experience with it.
I certainly have none.
All right, so here is the debate, which I'm so nervous I'm going to screw up, but let's see. It's strategy versus tactical. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying, because we'll get into this a little bit later when we get to the strategy category, but they are used almost, synonymously. They're intertwined. Some people cannot tell the difference between the two, and it's just widely debated in general. I went to many forums like Reddit and whatever, and they're like, no, this is considered tactical because of X, Y, and Z. And they're like, no, this is considered strategy because, A, B, X, Y, F, whatever. So it's just whatever
Right.
you decide. So I broke down, I have 3 kind of definitions here, all kind of relating to each other, and we'll break it down for you. So strategy is deciding what to do. So it's like in terms of an all-out war, who do you attack first, or do you just defend? And then tactics would be how to do that plan. So like once you decide on a plan, on a strategy, do you attack with all your soldiers? Do you attack half here, half there? Do you lie in wait for them to come to you? Do you spend all of your resources, sending out soldiers, or do you get better armor? It's like how you break down that plan, how you intend to, kind of carry that out.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So then the second definition is obviously very similar. Strategy is the overall campaign plan to reach the goal, to beat whatever, objective you're trying to do. And tactics would be the actual means used to gain or complete an objective. And then the third one, which I like, which is my favorite, is strategy is, winning the war, but tactics is winning the battle. So like in an all-out war, in real history, there's several battles, throughout the entire war. So it's specifically winning that battle, right, with those people, that, infantry or whatever, those soldiers, beating that battle versus beating the entire war, which is, this troop, these tanks, these, soldiers are going to do this and go here. And these soldiers over here with cannons and, bow and arrow or whatever is going to go over here to this country. Does that one make
I don't
sense
know
too?
about the listeners, but that is my preferred definition for super dumbed down for me. I love it.
Yeah. So we'll see, where that comes into strategy later. But this is specifically just for RPGs. So also while researching, like I said, was very contended. The difference between the two, many people think that tactical RPGs are actually a subgenre of strategy RPGs, which I could see because they're basically the same thing. It's just the scale of which you're playing. Are you doing the per soldier basis, or are you doing like the whole company, like the whole army kind of thing? So I could see that, but then I guess you'd have to ask which one came first.
Right.
I feel like that would help. And like I said, many people use them. Many websites, even reviews and stuff, use them interchangeably. And then here's another, just if you didn't get those other definitions, here's one that I pulled straight from Wikipedia, right? Most strategy video games involve a mix of both strategy and tactics, so there you go. Hope that clears it up. Tactics usually refer to how troops are utilized in a given battle, whereas strategy describes the mix of troops, the location of the battle, and the commander's larger goals. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so that is the definition we were going with. So strategy and tactical RPGs have, all of the traits of RPGs, but it just depends on which soldiers you are commanding and where. So then the next one is a really big one that I thought was good to mention. I don't know if these to be two separate subgenres or not, but I have a category here described as the difference between Western RPGs and Japanese RPGs, because they are completely very much different. And that's a very large section. So I guess we'll decide.
I need to learn this one for sure.
Yeah, buckle up, baby. So I have broken it down into the different elements. So we're going to start first with storytelling. So Western RPGs usually give the player a single, fully customizable avatar. Like your character, you can make whatever you want to do with them, which serves as the main character of the game. So like, how you see those memes of where your character is in like, it's got a feather hat or like a scarf or whatever, and like this really serious setting, and all the other characters are like, soldiers and whatnot. And you're like, oh, obviously this person's the main character of the game. You seen those?
Right.
JRPGs often has the player playing as a predetermined character with predetermined traits and personalities. That's kind of how they get like their cutscenes in and like develop their characters.
Oh, that makes sense.
Mini story elements in Western RPGs are determined by the actions of the player. So the player can choose to be good or evil or anything in between. You can go steal those eggs from that mother, or you can, burn that farm down if you want. Where in JRPGs, that's just not the case. JRPGs usually have a much more clear-cut and defined ending with a focus on cinematic experience. You with me so far?
I'm with you.
All right. So the next category is world building and art style. So both emphasize lore and typically take place in a fantasy or sci-fi setting of some sort. But the way they present themselves to the player is different. So Western RPGs tend to have more realistic character designs, leaning more towards like a Lord of the Rings-esque looking style. Like it's more serious, more grounded, more realistic. Like the people actually look like people. They include species such as elves, giants, dragons, dwarves, but they all look as realistic as they can be because dragons aren't real, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Whereas JRPGs have a more anime-like style, more cartoony, more animated, less rooted in reality kind of style. So the next category I have here is, they're just basically different in every single way, but is gameplay. Both of these RPGs take an enormous amount of time to complete, but the hours spent on the games are spent in very different ways. So side quests in RPGs have a very lengthy story component behind them, and completing these quests will earn the player rewards and build towards an overall goal of like enriching the story, expanding the lore. Um, whereas JRPGs, they can literally be no story behind it at all. It's like, go fetch me that thing from this person, this other nation, and I'll give you, points or experience, whatever. And there's also a lot of grinding in JRPGs. That's kind of like their whole thing. That's like the whole thing of the game. Because basically, well, you know what? I have this later. But yeah, JRPGs is very grindy, whereas Western RPGs are more like story-enriching side quests. So the next category we have here is combat. So depending on the subgenre of JRPG, the combat could range from strategy or tactical combat to real-time or turn-based. It just depends on the game and what genres are associated with it. And Western RPGs often feature a command-based input system, a form of action-based system like first-person shooting or like third-person shooting. Western RPGs have much more free movement than most RPGs, meaning that you can go anywhere, do anything, especially in battle. If you want to dodge out of the way, you can do that in Western RPGs, but you can't do that in turn-based. There's no dodging. It's all preset. And then this is interesting, which I did not know, but the next category is platforms versus console. So Western RPGs are almost always created with PCs first and foremost in the developer's mind. This is where they will often have the best performance and the best visuals and frame rates and all that jazz. But they are also ported to home consoles like PlayStation, Xbox, and whatnot. But PC gaming is more popular in the West. So that is why we have these bigger like Western RPGs and why they don't sell as well over, in Japan and whatnot. And JRPGs are designed around consoles, specifically portable consoles or mobile like touchscreen devices, because most Japanese people want to play their games on the go. And this is also why Japanese games are more grindy, because it's designed for you to like play for 10 minutes and then quit. No Japanese developer is gonna like expect you to sit there for 6 hours and grind over and over and over doing the same things. So that's why it's so like ridiculous amounts. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna ride the bus for 20 minutes, so I'm gonna play this game, grind for 20 minutes, and then stop. So it's not like super repetitive, which I thought was really cool.
So I like that you're breaking this down and that it's not just about like what grinds my gears is when people say that a JRPG is made by a Japanese developer and Western RPGs are not, because that is clearly not the case based off of what you just said.
Yeah, I mean, it probably was at some point.
Sure.
But definitely not anymore. I mean, just because it's a JRPG does not mean it has to be made by Japanese people or in Japan or whatever, ported from, Japan to here. Does not mean any of that. Maybe back in the day, but this is 2022, man.
Get with the times.
Yeah, get with the times. Okay, so this, like I said, this is going to come back. Should dungeon crawler be its own genre? So to me, dungeon crawler is literally just, going through a single dungeon or multiple dungeons. But that's like literally every game ever. You always go in dungeons, whether it's like called a dungeon or like a castle or like, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
like an
I'll tell you what.
prison.
The one dungeon crawler I've played is a mana game called Children of Mana, and it was straight up like it was almost a beat 'em up, because all you would do is go to the dungeon, kill everybody, and leave. And the story in between was very minimal. Doing any exploring, there was zero exploring to be done. That's a big key thing. And so I can't obviously speak for the whole genre, having just played one game, but has that been your experience with dungeon crawlers?
See, no, I don't think I've ever specifically played a dungeon crawler.
Okay.
But obviously a lot of JRPGs happen in dungeons. So I think what you're saying is what makes a dungeon crawler is that you're literally only in that dungeon, right? And the whole sole purpose of the game is to get to the bottom of said dungeon.
Yeah, and just no exploring to be done.
No exploring. Okay, that makes sense. So, yeah, I think it should be its own subcategory then, or subgenre.
If that's the case, with our limited experience.
Yes, I agree. And then something else worth mentioning, I don't know if we want to talk about this in depth, but the combat and how they differ in each. So specifically for me, when I was getting into RPGs, I had no idea what turn-based was, strategy, tactical, any of that. I had no idea. So I just thought when I liked games like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 when I played it, I was going to like every JRPG ever made. And that is absolutely not the case. So I like Xenoblade Chronicles because it's action RPG, the action element meaning like the combat is more open, you can move around, you're not stuck in like a turn-based kind of combat style. But when I picked up some of the other ones, like the Tales games, I think, and I can't remember the other one that I played, but I was like, I don't like this at all. I'm so confused as to why I like this JRPG, but I don't like this one, So specifically when looking at RPGs, if you like action and if you like a real-time combat, you're most likely not going to enjoy turn-based. They are two very, very different things. Even though the whole game can be related with the RPG elements, they're completely different gameplay-wise.
For sure.
That's all I got for that one. It's your turn.
Well, do we have examples? I guess you would have mentioned them if you did, but examples of Western RPGs and examples of JRPGs.
Oh, yeah. So The Witcher is not a JRPG, is a Western RPG. I believe Red Dead Redemption is also a Western RPG, but I could be wrong.
Oh, wow.
Don't quote me on that one because I didn't write it down. But like I said earlier, a lot of the Tales game is a very good JRPG. They're more turn-based. There's also Octopath Traveler, which is JRPG. There's the Ys series, the Xenoblade Chronicles series. I don't know if Final Fantasy would be considered a JRPG. Probably, because they have that real fantastical kind of setting. And it's more anime style. But yeah, those would be examples. But they can also be tactics or strategy. JRPG is just kind of like another layer to RPGs.
Yeah, that was another thing I was thinking.
So I don't know if they're their own subgenre or not.
So just a quick Google search, like the top, before I even click on a link, the top things that pop up for Western RPGs: Fallout 2, Fallout New Vegas, Wasteland 2. I know neither of us has played that series, but Borderlands is also on here, which, oh my gosh, definitely an FPS before. I don't know. Gosh, so many things can overlap. It gets awful. So yeah, probably should have written some down, but that is all right. Okay. We have another big one here. Yeah, we should have done this one at a later point in the episode, but we're doing it. Let's do it. We're going into adventure genre here. Okay. The reason this is a big one is because anything that the internet or maybe you have called action in the past is going to be lumped into this category, because Hannah and I kind of agreed that action is in almost every video game. So having one genre called action wouldn't really make sense. Yeah. I mean, so many, anything we mentioned today could probably qualify as an action game. Even Guitar Hero. I mean, there's action going on in that game, and I've never been a fan of calling games action games. And we've definitely put in some serious thought and consideration into this, and I think it's adventure is the genre, and that's what we're going with.
Okay.
Wikipedia says adventure games are when the player assumes the role of a protagonist in an interactive story driven by exploration and or puzzle solving. That is those are the two keywords there for sure. You can see the overlap of this with RPGs immediately, but I assure you they are not the same. Early example, Adventure on Atari. Developed by Atari Incorporated, published in 1980. The protagonist is a square, and he's off to go find a magical chalice to bring back to the Golden Castle. Um, when I say he's a square, that's not me insulting him. He's just literally like a few pixels that make up a square.
I was about to say, he's a square.
You pretty much explore an open world, quote unquote, picking up items and killing enemies along the way. It's about as much as an open world could be in the 2600. This was conceived. Oh, I thought this was super interesting. This game was actually like a graphical version of a text adventure game called Colossal Cave Adventure from 3 years prior, 1977. So, they took a text adventure game, which we'll talk about in a minute, and they made it like with graphics. You know what I mean? Because text adventure games are just text on a screen. But yeah, I thought that was interesting.
No, that is interesting.
It's the first console game to take place across multiple screens, I believe. Either that or Wikipedia is wrong. Don't at me. And the game had like 30 different rooms. You have played this one, and I have not. One of your favorites, you said?
Oh, totally.
All right. The Legend of Zelda franchise, easily the most rudimentary like adventure game for sure. The games focus on exploration and puzzles. You locate the dungeon, you figure out how to get into the dungeon and through the dungeon, and then you defeat the boss. Definitely not the first adventure game by any means, but definitely the one most people can relate with. And I also threw in Tomb Raider, though I haven't played the originals. They are definitely adventure games with puzzles and exploration. Developed by Core Design, published in 1996. Subgenres of adventure. Not a lot. But one that I did forget to take notes on is stealth. So I did pull up the Wikipedia page real quick. And I 100% think stealth falls under the adventure category. So yeah. Real quick, a stealth game is a type of video game in which the player primarily uses stealth to avoid or overcome opponents. And games in the genre typically allow the player to remain undetected by hiding, sneaking, or using disguises. The most obvious examples, even if you haven't played them, Metal Gear Solid, all of those games, maybe not all of them, but those games are definitely stealthy. An early game, 1981's Castle Wolfenstein, fits into that category as well. And then we have survival horror. So people probably would argue that survival horror could be its own genre. I don't think so. I think that something I have tried to do in my 10, 12 pages of notes here, 13, whatever I said, is I'm trying to keep story separate from the genres here. So like I mentioned earlier, the story has its own genre, and saying that a game is a horror game, there can be platformers that are horror, there can be RPGs that are horror. I can't think of any right now, but I think survival horror our survival horror specifically is like I wrote them down, bullet points here. Atmospheric elements are used to scare the player, and that one's kind of debatable as like if that's gameplay or if that's story. But the rest of these are not debatable. The survival part is a key gameplay element where you either have no weapon, you have extremely limited ammo, or you have breakable weapons. And typically the player has to rely on stealth to get through the game. That makes you wonder, is this a subgenre underneath stealth? I don't know. I don't think so. Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Fatal Frame, all killer examples for sure. What do you think about that being a subgenre?
I don't. It depends on what other, elements that it has. That's kind of why we decided that action wasn't its own, because it could be in so many other of these categories. I don't know. If you can give me a specific example, I can maybe argue my way out of it, but I'm not sure.
That's all right. I know you haven't played any. I know you don't like being scared, so it's kind of a tough one.
I absolutely hate it.
Okay. Text adventure, also called interactive fiction. Wikipedia says it's using text commands to control characters and influence the environment. These are definitely a dying or dead genre. I mean, it was really a thing because of how limited the hardware was. So, like I was talking about with adventure earlier, the game adventure, not the genre. It's just text on a screen. Um, and that's not completely always the case, right? Because you can control characters, influence the environment. So there were games later on where, like the Oregon Trail, the prime example, everybody knows this game. It was actually developed to teach school kids about 19th century pioneer life. You might
And
argue that's
dysentery.
an yes, absolutely. It's you might argue that's an educational text adventure. I think yes, but
Oh no.
we haven't
Oh
gotten to
no.
education yet.
Well, could it be
um,
simulation too?
oh Lord, simulating this century. Where was I going with that? Um, yeah, you literally these games took a serious amount of programming. Having to take into consideration like a large amount of inputs that a player could possibly put in. Like you literally type in the game responses to prompts that it gives you. I can see why that would be a programming nightmare.
Yeah, so hold on. My very limited experience with doing programming and stuff like that, yes, I can say that you have to have so many exceptions. Is it capital? Is it not capital? Is there a period? Stuff like that. That's
and
a
a
really
typo,
long
that's on
if
you.
statement. That's a really long if statement, baby.
Yeah. Okay, so then Zork, the Great Underground Empire, developed by Infocom, published in 1980. I have definitely never heard of this one. When it comes to text games, text adventure games, like the Oregon Trail is like the one and done for me, and I've never even played that one, but everybody knows
What?
that game. Yeah, I need to play that for sure. I'm sure it's free everywhere online.
Yeah, it is.
um, Visual novels, I've never really heard of these, but well, I guess I didn't know that this is what these games were. So they're extremely popular in Japan. Apparently visual novels make up 70% of PC games in Japan. Thought that was pretty interesting.
Yep, I
Um,
believe it.
these are basically games that have you reading the story and making choices along the way. The player interaction comes from making your choices in the game, and your choices will affect what happens next. Examples I have that I've actually heard of here: Professor Layton. I know that is pretty sure that's published by Nintendo on the DS. And then there's the Ace Attorney franchise, which is a Capcom published game.
Yep.
The To help explain what a visual novel is, I brought the Wikipedia's like what it says about Ace Attorney's gameplay. In the courtroom trials, the player aims to get their client declared not guilty. To do so, they cross-examine witnesses and aim to find lies and inconsistencies in the testimonies. They are able to go back and forth between the different statements in the testimony and can press the witness for more details on a statement. So that is the kind of stuff that you're doing in a visual novel. It's like the chillest possible genre, honestly. Maybe even more chill than like Animal Crossing, right?
Are there horror visual novel games?
Oh my
Text
gosh.
adventure games?
Oh, there's gotta be. I'm pretty sure I've heard of horror text adventure games. Like how could you make that scary? I don't know.
I have no idea.
But there are horror books, so that's how.
That's true. Wow. So smart.
Point and click is another one. I'm very inexperienced in this genre for sure. Basically, the entire game is controlled by moving your cursor on the screen and clicking to either pick up an item, use an item, move the character, or talk to another character. It's in the name. Everybody knows point and click, even if they've never played it. Wikipedia says Escape the Room games fall under their own subgenre, but I would fully say that these fall under the point and click subgenre, because I've never played an Escape the Room game that wasn't point and click. But yeah, I
Right?
don't think like those are like classic Flash games that you would play on like all those websites as a kid.
I've played
Um,
so many.
yeah, we've probably played the same ones. That's funny. Um, but the big examples are The Secret of Monkey Island. I hardly know much about this game. I know it's a LucasArts game for PC that is infamous now. And Telltale Games, I know that they are currently down. They might be coming back, making a return soon, but the Walking Dead franchise and the Batman the Telltale series are examples of point and click, and they have really brought back the genre. I think those games are very
Are
popular.
those point and click? Well, obviously you don't have a mouse, so you can't really click those. But they're more like button inputs, right? So like you
I
click the
think
triangle button to do this or a square button to do that.
yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think there is also point and click.
Gotcha.
um yeah, interactive movie, yet another subgenre of adventure games.
God.
This one I don't think exists a whole lot these days. A game that has either fully pre-rendered graphics or full motion video from live actors on a set. Typically, these games have very little player interface because the entire game is literally pre-recorded. Did we play Dragon's Lair when you came to Texas
No.
at the arcade?
Oh, yeah,
No.
we did. Yeah. It was two.
Okay.
I think it was the second one.
Right, I think you're right. Anyways, best example I can give is Dragon's Lair. Infamously tough arcade game that you literally just move a joystick to play. It's basically just a game based on QuickTime events. Um, and yeah, typically, like I said in the definition, these games have very little player interface because it is pre-recorded. So you either do the right thing or you do the wrong thing, and it'll play the pre-recorded I don't know, cutscene for the respective movement.
That being said, though, they are very difficult. I mean, we did not get very far
Dragon's
when
Lair
we
is
played.
very difficult, yeah. Um, Sucked a lot of quarters out of kids' pockets back in the day, I'm sure.
Yeah, it did.
Night Trap is the definition of infamous for sure. Probably the most infamous game for the genre. Um, you get a map and a bunch of cameras to flip between, and you're in this house. And your task is to activate traps to save a bunch of girls having a sleepover from being killed by a bunch of vampires. As famous as this game is, I don't have a Sega CD to play it. I don't have the Switch re-release. Yeah, I've never played the game, but that's my synopsis of it after a quick look at Wikipedia.
Sounds about right.
Um, my personal experience with adventure games, tons of Zelda games over the years. Most recently, I started Link's Awakening, and I just finished the original Zelda. Big feat there. Huge fan of the modern Tomb Raider trilogy. Those games rock. I recently played 12 Minutes, which I would say is my first true point and click game that wasn't like a flash game from the 2000s. Highly recommend 12 Minutes. Most recently, the Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. I mentioned that earlier, but that game was heavy on the story. Absolutely felt like it was 50-50 on story and gameplay. Um, and then my only survival horror experiences are like Outlast 1 and 2 and Alien Isolation. But yeah, that's what I got. Anything you want to mention for adventure?
So you mentioned the Atari game Adventure. Do you think the whole category or genre is based off of that game's name, like Adventure Like? Or do you think Adventure just happens to be like, yeah, we're going on an adventure, so let's call it Adventure?
I think it's a happy coincidence. I think they got lucky with that name, and nobody. No, you're stretching it, Hannah.
I do like that game though. I
Yeah.
actually forgot about what it was until you said it, and then I had to like remember what it was. But yeah, that game is very fun. But I mean, is it a dungeon crawler? Because that's kind of all you're doing. Anyway, I digress. um, So I did want to say why I didn't consider action like its own genre, rather it's a subgenre of all these other genres, is because even if you're looking at it like a tree, like you're looking at it like organizationally, if you have action in every single, I mean not every single, I suppose, but most of the other subgenres, so like action RPG, action adventure, action racing, action shooters, like why would you make that? Just is so much more confusing if you have action be its own category, because you have under action you have RPG, adventure, racing, but then
Yeah.
under racing you also have action, and it's like, wait, well, that's really confusing. What is it, a subgenre or is it a genre?
Yeah, I'm glad you
So I
brought that
say
up.
a lot of people would say that's like a hybrid. Like that was the term thrown out a lot, is action is one of those hybrid terms that can like fit with other games to make it a hybrid. So yeah,
Absolutely.
just thought that was worth mentioning. So the next one that I have is racing.
Woo!
So I didn't realize there was so many different definitions of racing. You even told me one that we'll talk about in a second, but I was like, huh, okay, that makes sense. I did kind of internally debate whether that was racing or not, but we'll get to
Even
it.
after I texted you, I was internally debating it, so I'm curious to see what you came up with.
Okay, well, let's go. So definition of just blanket racing game is a video game genre in which the player participates in a racing competition. So, you're like, oh, okay, you'll see, you notice a racing game when you see it. It's like one of those it's like turn-based. So, subgenre, the first one is arcade style racing. You can debate me on whether this is actually a subgenre or not. So this puts fun and fast-paced experience above all else. They encourage the player to take high risks by power sliding or drifting or whatever that game's mechanic is through courses, or like I do when I play arcade style games, is I double smash the gas pedal and it makes the car go vroom vroom.
Yeah, cruising games.
So they're not super realistic. Obviously the cars look real, but like the mechanics, obviously if I step on the gas, my car's not going to lift up and do a wheelie, down the course. Examples of this would be Outrun, which we played at the arcade, didn't we?
Probably. I love that game.
Then we have Cruisin', which is just a freaking classic. I love those games. You can also race as a dinosaur, so that tells you it's not very realistic. Daytona USA, Sega Rally, Burnout, and Need for Speed, all classic examples. Pretty self-explanatory, right? That makes sense. Do you think that deserves its own subgenre?
What did you call it? Arcade?
It's called arcade style racing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So the next one is, now you can debate me on whether this one belongs under racing or not, but simulation racing. So designed to simulate an actual racing experience and handling on an automobile. Often they use like real licensed cars, like, your Mustang, your Camaro, your whatever, or real racing leagues. The vehicular behavior physics, got that word right, are like a really key factor. Players have to exercise proper like cornering techniques and precision racing and precision like maneuvers and stuff in order to race successfully. Examples are Forza Horizon, Project Cars, Gran Turismo, and Forza Motorsport, which I know you've played Forza, right?
Yeah, there's the Forza Horizon series and Forza Motorsport. I've only played Horizon. I have not played the simulation game.
But those are much more reliant on like actual driving skill. Well, as actual as they can be, on a controller versus behind
Mm-hmm.
the actual wheel of a car. Please don't think that if you can play these games, you can drive a car. That's just dangerous. The next one, everyone's favorite, my favorite, probably your favorite, is kart racing, which absolutely deserves its own subgenre. Simplified driving mechanics. You're avoiding obstacles like bananas or shells or whatever other else kind of obstacles thrown in your way. Usually have unusual track designs. So like in Mario Kart, you can like turn upside down and like float and fly and whatnot. Usually the players use some kind of like power up, which will help you, give you an advantage over the other players or hurt other players. Examples: Mario Kart, obviously, Crash Team Racing, Nickelodeon Kart Racers, and Team Sonic Racing. I've only played one of those.
And only one of them matters.
That's right, because anything is not Mario Kart is definitely not going to be as good.
Yep,
Strike.
they're
Okay.
all ripoffs.
Yeah, they are. Write that down on the record. So the next one is one that I did not even realize was a thing, but kind of makes sense. So it's futuristic gaming, or racing. So racing games where a player uses science fiction vehicles such as sci-fi cars and race against the clock or other vehicles. Some games also feature vehicular combat. So example, can you guess it? It's by Nintendo.
F-Zero.
Bang! That's it. F-Zero, you got Star Rider, Cosmos Circuit, Splendor Blast, and Wipeout.
Wipeout for sure.
That one never crossed my mind. Had I not looked at Wikipedia, I never would have been like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. But yeah,
the genre or that game?
No, that subgenre.
Yeah, I don't even know if I agree with it, to tell you the truth. I mean,
but it doesn't. Go ahead.
I could see it going either way. I mean, it's just racing. Like, you're almost focusing on the story side of things, but you're kind of not, because this subgenre specifically has cars that go 500 miles an hour, and like, I don't know. Like, I've only played F-Zero, so I can't really talk about the genre, but I could see it going either way.
Yeah, that was my understanding, because when I looked at gameplay of all these other ones, it's really just cars going really, really fast.
Right.
This is the fast car racing subgenre. So the next one is one that you said that I should include, brought to me, is vehicular combat racing, which, again, didn't know that was a thing. So the definition here is the primary objective of the gameplay is to destroy other vehicles with weapons or other kinds of power-ups. Normally features a variety of different vehicles, each with their own attributes, special abilities, weapons, or anything like that. They focus on fast-paced action, so racing really fast, crashes, explosion. Maybe this is action racing. Not sure if this should be in sports or racing, but we'll see. Does this actually count as racing if the cars aren't necessarily going from like point A to point B? They're not starting at a starting line and crossing a finish line as the end point. It's more like no set path. It's more like a map where you can just do whatever and try to kill the other cars.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's almost that's kind of why I'm second guessing it myself, because you're not. I haven't played Twisted Metal, for example, but I don't know if you're actually racing in that game or if you happen to be in a car killing things and people. So I don't know.
I have played Twisted Metal. It was my cousin's game, and it scared the crap out of me because it's got like that big clown head on the car.
Right.
I would say that it's not racing. It's more like trying to destroy other cars. I played it on my cousin's PSP like forever ago. And I don't remember ever... I also watched gameplay too, by the way, but I don't ever remember racing from like a starting point to a finishing line. But then that brings up the debate, then what would it be under?
Right.
Sports? Which is what I was like, it's the only really thing it could be.
Beat 'em up?
Unless it's just action. Oh, could be beat 'em up.
That's a tough one.
That is a tough one. But classic examples, you already mentioned it, Twisted Metal, but other ones include Cell Damage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Full Auto.
Never heard of that one.
So Cell Damage has different modes, like most games do. Looks like there is a specific racing one where you do complete laps, but then there's also just all-out destruction modes. So that also brings into debate the thing with modes. It has different modes. What do you classify it as? And then Full Auto is a mix between racing and combat. So you are actually racing, but you're also like shooting at the other cars at the same time. And that's in career mode. So they're very similar, but different.
Let us know in the comments, because we are unsure.
Okay, so the last category I have here is I'm not sure where to categorize these or if they need their own subgenres. So the first one is Tabletop Racers, which is very different from like a 3D racer. It's more like top-down, looking at it as if you're looking at a board game and racing around. So I don't know if that needs its own thing. Or games that don't focus on cars. It's like jet skis, ATVs, toy cars, semi-trucks, or like animal racers on like horses and stuff. I don't know where those go. Or does it matter?
Oh, that's so funny. You always think of cars for racing, but horseback racing, that's a freaking thing. Um,
Snowmobiles, jet skis with
yeah,
wave
Hydro
race, that's a
Thunder is a
thing.
big one. Definitely. I mean, there's nothing that says racing has to be about cars, so I would definitely say that they don't need their own subgenres, but tabletop might need a subgenre because that's a completely different perspective. So I'm
Hmm.
with you on that one.
But as far as the other ones, we could just say like cars as one subgenre and then have all the other things about cars and then
You
have,
could.
non-cars,
Yeah.
others. Put it in the other category, but was not sure where to classify those because I mean, even if it's on a jet ski, it's the same racing, start to finish, especially with wave race.
Yeah.
You go left, right, but it's still racing. It's in the base mechanics. So, yeah, I agree tabletop, and I agree with the other ones that they can just fit into other things. But everyone just assumes cars when racing.
Right.
So yeah, that's all I got for racing.
Well, I think you did a great job on racing. Now let's get into some combat. We're going to talk about fighting games now. Um, there is fighting going on in the majority of genres discussed. So, what exactly sets fighting games apart? Combat is obviously the main focus, and fighting takes place in a small arena where the last person standing is the winner. That is my own definition. Um,
I like that.
and I've pretty much broken it down into two, um, which is probably the least subgenres for all of these. But I think you have two styles. You have one on one, which is typically one on one. Like even these are not exactly one on one, but I'm calling it the one on one style anyway. Uh, it's your typical Street Fighter. You have a health bar. You win by reducing the opponent's health to zero. You're confined to a small map, no items to pick up. Oftentimes your character is locked onto the opponent, like their eyes, you're always facing your opponent, even if they jump to the other side of you. Um, Much of the challenge comes from learning and performing tricky button combinations. And yeah, that is what makes up this style. In 1976, Sega had a heavyweight champ arcade cabinet. It was a two-player arcade game with boxing gloves for controllers, and it was a side view, just like you see in Street Fighter, except like it was practically one-dimensional. Like this game was flat. You stick your hand in the glove controller, I guess you could say. It's pretty cool actually. You move the glove up and down to choose your punching height, and you push the glove in to strike. So pretty advanced for 1976. I feel like it's pretty cool. Um, and it was super successful in Japan, according to Wikipedia. And then, of course, you have Street Fighter 2, Capcom's franchise that started in 1991, and Tekken. I wrote down because that one is more of like a 3D environment. So it's still one on one, but you are in an arena that is kind of like you're not just going left and right. You can go into the screen, out of the screen, left to right. It's way different than playing Street Fighter, but still similar enough to be under the same umbrella, I think. So that's one subgenre. The other one is your arena fighter, and this one is quite possible with more than two players. You have items in this subgenre, whether it's for weapons, projectiles, health. There's items galore. Um, I guess I'll say typically for that because I don't know. There's probably some arena fighter out there that doesn't have items. You're not locked onto the opponent player. You can kind of like move about freely. Um, Examples are obviously Super Smash Brothers. There's no debating if this is a fighting game.
It is
Um,
the example.
yeah, and it really is the example. I can't think of any like a whole lot of others except for like the clones that have been coming out lately. And also Power Stone is a Dreamcast game I've always wanted to play that is definitely fits this category. It's definitely 3D as opposed to 2D like Smash Bros. But yeah, Power Stone 1 and 2 on the Dreamcast. Personal. Street Fighter 2 was one of my first video games ever. I love that game just like everybody else. And while I do have fun with one-on-one style fighters, I have zero interest in learning a bunch of button combinations and becoming an actually good player at these games.
Very
Um,
casual.
exactly. I can enjoy these games casually. I can do a Hadouken, and that's about it on Street Fighter 2. I know that combination. um, the only other fighters of the one-on-one genre that I've spent a lot of time with are Marvel vs. Capcom and Injustice Gods Among Us. And I think both of those have you choosing multiple characters. Maybe not Injustice, but definitely Marvel vs. Capcom is like known for being a 3 versus 3, and you can switch between characters, which is kind of a cool gimmick that the franchise is known for. And obviously, just like everyone else, I've played thousands of hours of Super Smash Brothers ever since Melee came out on GameCube.
Melee.
That's it. Keeping it short for the fighting genre.
That's it?
That's it. Only 2 subgenres.
That might be our shortest one yet, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next one is puzzle, everyone's favorite genre. Because puzzles are literally in almost every single game everywhere, right?
True.
So broad. So the basic definition of puzzle games are video games that the main mechanic is solving puzzles. These types of puzzles can test problem-solving skills like logic, pattern recognition, sequence solving, spatial recognition, and word completion. So literally anything. So these subgenres are, the first one is physics games. So a type of logical puzzle game where the player uses the game's physics and environment to complete each puzzle. These kinds of games use consistent physics to make the games more challenging versus just like, throwing anything anywhere and then it working. Examples are World of Goo, Cut the Rope, which I know literally everyone's familiar with, or Angry Birds. Everyone knows Angry Birds. And Crush the Castle
game?
That's what they said.
What
and
does
Crush the Castle. That's what I say too. I mean, the point of the game is to knock down the other things. The other person's, I guess it's a castle or construction of some sort. But you have to use, you have to get a good angle. You have to pull it back as much. The further you pull it back, the further it goes, which is a puzzle game.
I think it is a strategy RPG roguelike.
It totally could be. Do the birds die? Do they die forever? But Crush the Castle is very similar to Angry Birds, and I've played many of Crush the Castles over my lifetime.
What is that, the off-brand?
No! Crush the Castle, I think, came first before Angry Birds. It's like...
What?
I played it on the computer, and it's like you get a map, and you go to, different levels on said map, and, again, you try to destroy the, whatever, the enemy tower, construction, castle, or whatnot, with bombs, or, flaming bombs, or, arrows, or, and there's people inside of the little thing, and you have to try to kill them and crash the castle at the same time. You've never played those?
Nope.
Oh, dude, you're missing out. Yeah, Crush the Castle is super fun. But, yeah. I mean, what else would you categorize that as?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the real question is. I don't know what else it would be. Action?
Just action. Nothing here but action. I mean, it is explosions, so I guess maybe. Okay, so the next subgenre is coding. It's a logical puzzle games that require programming elements. So take that with you will. So I thought Mario Maker and the PS4 Dreams would fit into this category, but both of those genres are game creation system. So but I mean, aren't they kind of coding? You're not actually sitting there hash slash, whatever, print, blah, blah, blah. But you are kind of programming in the fact that you're making your own levels.
Well, until you give me an example of coding, I cannot confirm or deny that.
I can't, maybe. So, again, Game Builder Garage is another one which I thought would be kind of coding, which is the Nintendo kind of equivalent to Dreams, kind of in a way-ish. But some other examples that actually said it on the Wikipedia were The Incredible Machine and Infinifactory, if you've ever heard of those.
I wish I had.
Yeah. That's all I got
I mean,
on those. I don't. Where else would it be?
don't you do something coding related in that in the garage game? What is it called?
Game Builder Garage.
Yeah. I
Yes,
don't
you do.
remember.
Kind of. I don't. It's very hard to explain, but I mean, I don't. I mean, when I was doing programming, coding, in other words, it's very much like a puzzle, regardless. You know. But the only thing is, you're creating said puzzle. You know, it's not like a set puzzle. It's not like a, oh, you did this correctly, you win the game kind of thing. You know, it's you are making your own objective and putting your own pieces into it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I agree if that's a puzzle game or not. I think it might be its own
No,
category.
I mean, if it had to be, oh yeah, I'm with you there. Its own category is exactly what we should say. And just to be clear, Game Builder Garage on Wikipedia is not a coding game. It is a programming game.
Oh, Jesus. Well, what's the difference when you say you're programming and you say you're coding?
I'm dead.
I've been in computer science classes. I know the terminology. Okay, well, maybe we'll just throw that one out the window and say we don't care, because I don't think those games really exist anymore anyways, do they?
What, programming games?
No, coding specifically. Logical puzzle games that require programming elements.
I mean, I certainly haven't heard of any.
Okay, next is exploration puzzle games. This includes, now let's see what you think here, includes point-and-click games that often exhibit similarities with adventure games and walking simulators. Unlike logical puzzle games, though, these games generally require inductive reasoning, which is a method of reasoning where you draw conclusions by going from the specific to the general, to solve the problem. Mm-hmm. The defining trait is that the player must experiment with mechanisms in each level before they can solve the puzzle.
Yeah.
Puzzle elements do not... Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done. But I would say, like, Escape the Room, point and click type of game, man, it's kind of a puzzle.
Yep, that is one of the examples, actually.
Huh.
So puzzle elements do not have consistency throughout the game, so there's a lot of guessing and checking and exploration to reveal more of the puzzle. Now, I feel like I've played a bunch of these on, like, the PC. Have you ever played the Impossible Quiz?
That doesn't ring a bell.
Oh my gosh. What games have you played? Anyway, it's like one of those things where you're given there's different levels and you're given a screen and you have to just figure out what you're supposed to do. Is it supposed to, drag all the smaller X's and all the larger X's together? Is it to put all the colors in order? Is it, like that? But you're not really, like, exploring, like, walking. It's like all one screen, so I don't know where that fits, but you are kind of, like, supposed to, like, explore everything on the page. Anyway, some examples of exploration is Myst, Limbo, The Escape Room, games like The Room, and Mom Hid My Game, which I don't know if you know what that one is, but I think it came out really early in, I want to say, I can't remember if it came out on the Switch or the 3DS. I can't remember. But anyway, it's like a kind of escape the room game, but your mom hid, like, your games and you have to find them. So, like, is it in the closet or is it over here under the bed? You have to, like, kind of solve puzzles to, like, find your game. That's, like, the example that I know.
I just want to take a minute here to take a look back. Adventure that was defined as a story-driven experience with exploration and or puzzle solving. So some serious overlap here.
Is that a puzzle? Oh, man.
Anyways, carry on.
Okay, so my next one is hidden object games, which I'm sure you can think of some just, like, from books and stuff, like actual physical stuff. But it means a genre of puzzle games in which the character must find items from a list that are hidden within the scene. So everyone's classic example is... Go.
I Spy.
Yeah! I Spy or Where's Waldo? Or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't have many examples of them, video game wise, but I'm sure they exist
actually,
somewhere.
Both of those books have games, actually.
Oh, well, there you go. It's got its own category then. And then the last one I have here is probably the you're familiar with the most is tile matching, which is players manipulate tiles in order to make them disappear according to whatever the matching criteria is. If it's 3 in a row, if it's like shapes, or if it's one whole level. So the best known example is Tetris.
Oh, it's not Candy Crush?
You know what? That was on there actually, but I was like, no, we don't need to talk about that. Yeah, every mom's favorite game, Candy Crush.
Yeah.
No, but obviously the best known example for this is Tetris. Everyone kind of just goes back to Tetris. If it's related to Tetris in any way, it's probably a puzzle game. Other examples include the Puyo series, which I love so much, the Pokemon Puzzle League series, which I also love so much, all of those spin-off weird Kirby puzzle games, Tilt and Tumble or whatever, and then Crystal Crisis, which is a puzzle game with the Nicalis characters from like all those games that they published to the Switch, which was kind of cool.
What's it called?
It's called Crystal Crisis.
So,
yeah.
I don't think Tilt and Tumble is a puzzle game. I think one of us doesn't have it right in our head. I'm not sure who it is.
Oh no. Well, okay. Well, Kirby does have a lot of puzzle games, though.
Yeah, for sure. So Tetris 99, is that an action puzzle game, or is that a
totally?
Is that a battle royale?
No, that'd be a battle royale. That's its own category.
We don't have battle royale as a category.
You're right.
Battle royale puzzle game.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, we should put that in not a genre category, or not a genre on its own category.
Okay, yeah, I'm down with that. I have a section in here that I will talk about a little bit. I think
right, that's all I got for puzzle, though. Just think Tetris. If you're thinking puzzle, think Tetris. If it's like Tetris, it's probably a puzzle game.
Yep, that's exactly how I would describe I Spy and Myst.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Tetris.
Well, guys, we didn't plan for this originally, but I think we're actually going to split this into 2 episodes because we're already at 2 hours and we still have so many genres to cover. So,
like, we're not even halfway through.
Right. So yeah, we will see you in July for the rest of these genres. Make sure to join the Discord, and we will also be covering the listener responses. We have a lot more to talk about in the next episode, so stay tuned for that. Hannah, anything you want to throw in here at the end?
If we're wrong, tell us we're wrong, and if you can explain some of these that we didn't quite get, that'd be awesome. I'm always down to learn.
Absolutely.
If someone asks me, what's an adventure blah 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 game, I want to be able to tell them, I don't want to be ignorant. So if you could share, that'd be great.
What are your thoughts on action being a genre, and what are your thoughts on it being lumped into adventure? Yeah, be nice in the comments. I will say that I'm kind of sensitive.
Yeah, I do cry at night sometimes when people are angry and mean to me. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, be nice. Sharing is caring, and being caring is nice.
Where can the people find you on the internet and write you awful, rude messages, Hannah?
Yeah, please DM me or comment on any of my pictures on Game Girl Advance SP on Instagram.
I'm at Bird Dog Gaming everywhere. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you in July.
See ya.